after the 2020 election, many American voters may be curious about something called ballot harvesting. You might be interested to know that the Democratic Party did a trial run of ballot harvesting in the 2018 election. Let's read this article by Fox News from December 3rd, 2018 by Andrew O'Reilly. Ballot Harvesting Bounty: How Dems Apparently Used Election Law Change to Rout California Republicans. A minor change in California's election laws may have had a major effect on last month's midterm elections that saw Democrats steamroll their Republican rivals. Despite holding substantial leads on Election Day, many Republican candidates in California saw their advantage shrink and then disappear as late-arriving Democratic voters were counted in the weeks following the election. While no hard evidence is available, many observers point to the Democrats' use of ballot harvesting as a key to their success in the elections. There was a lot of evidence that ballot harvesting was going on. Neil Kelly, the registrar for voters in Southern California's Orange County, told Fox News every House seat went to a Democrat after an unprecedented 250,000 vote by-mail drop-offs were counted, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. People were carrying in stacks of 100 and 200 of them. We had multiple people calling to ask if these people were allowed to do this. 2 years ago, California Governor Jerry Brown signed into law AB 1921, which legalized the so-called practice of ballot harvesting. Previously, only a family member or someone living in the same household was permitted to drop off mail ballots for a voter, but the new law allowed anyone, including political operatives, to collect and return them. Alright, now the reaction of the Republican Party to this outright theft of elections and power in California was like Sheriff Andy Griffith and Barney Fife from the Andy Griffith Show, basically shrugging and grinning and saying, "Oh, shucks, how silly." I mean, they didn't take this seriously at all. Look at this reaction. Some Republican leaders in Washington have expressed confusion over what happened in California. You were forced out of power for the next 50 to 100 years, Republican leaders. What's confusing about that? We were only down 26 seats nationally the night of the election. We lost basically every California race. Outgoing House Speaker Paul Ryan told the Washington Post. There's a real moron right there. Republicans happy about getting the elections stolen from them, and this guy was thrown out as Speaker of the House by the outright theft by Democrat mail-in ballots. When you have candidates that win the absentee ballot vote, win the day of the vote, and then lose 3 weeks later because of provisionals, that's really bizarre. No ex-House Speaker Paul Ryan. That means Democrats don't respect the law, don't respect the Constitution, and will cheat to win because power is all they respect. And it's thanks to knucklehead Republicans like this guy who hated President Donald Trump that the Republicans are no longer running the House of Representatives. I'm not saying there's anything nefarious about it because I just don't know. But we believe we were up about 6 seats in California the night of the election. Now, I think we just lost every single one of these. We were well aware of this. We even did it ourselves. We pay attention to election laws. None of these Republican leaders will actually come out and say they had the election stolen from them by the Democrats. And so they're blaming other factors. Heightened enthusiasm. And the Democrats, of course, agree with their genteel Republican colleagues. We beat Republicans on the ground fair and square. In one anecdote, Democratic volunteers in Orange County visited a home 4 times to speak with the owner's 18-year-old daughter, who expressed no voting preference, to see if she wanted them to pick up her ballot for her. So, think about this. The ideology was so important in California that they continually visited the home of this 18-year-old woman and pressured her to fill out a mail-in ballot for the Democratic Party. Each time she told them she had no preference. But that wasn't good enough for Democrats because free speech, free opinions, none of that matters. Only power matters to the Democratic Party. Now, you read this, and then you wonder about these Republicans just shrugging and saying, "Aw, shucks, I wonder why we lost that election." Well, you're playing wiffle ball and the Democrats are playing hardball. Republicans admitted they were at least a little bit impressed by how the Democrats pulled off their near sweep of the House in California. I have a little bit of professional admiration for how well the Democrats executed their plan, claimed Dale Neubauer, a longtime Republican strategist. If Republicans fought the way Democrats did, they should have done everything in their power to block this bill from taking place. They should have occupied the courthouse where the judge was ruling on its legality. They should have shut down the government. They should have barricaded and protested and rioted, just like Democrats do when they don't get their way. Instead, these knucklehead Republicans smiled and grinned and laughed it off and said, "Well, gee, I guess they beat us fair and square. If Republicans can't find a way to match it, we're going to lose more elections all over the country." Which brings us to 2020. I'm not angry with the Democrats at all. They are willing to break any law and commit any crime to achieve their political goals. We already know this. What really steams me is the weak, pathetic, lackluster response of the Republicans. If people of good conscience do nothing in the presence of evil, that is perpetuating the evil, while the Democrats are outright stealing the elections. Look at this. People carrying in stacks of 100 and 200 of them in California in 2018. Simply put, it means that the Democratic Party has taken this trial run where the Republicans offered no resistance, and the Republicans surrendered immediately to this illegal assault on our election system. So the Democrats said, well, let's just apply this nationwide during the 2020 election. And we saw in South Carolina, a judge appointed by Obama ruled that signatures didn't even have to match on mail-in ballots. So the article told you what happened in California in 2018, but it doesn't really define what ballot harvesting is. First, you have to have an election. Let's say a Republican in California is ahead on election night by 10,000 votes. The Democrats now have a number. They need to produce that number of ballots after the election in order to overturn the results of that election. Democrat operatives go to work filling out mail-in ballots, and as we've seen with this election in 2020, they don't even have to try to make signatures match. Just start filling out ballots after election night until you reach the number you need to pass the Republican lead of 10,000 votes, 50,000 votes. It doesn't matter. All that matters is the power of the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has repeated this process for the 2020 election. And the sad thing is, when you see Republicans that won re-election celebrating all over the nation, they don't particularly seem to care whether President Trump is fighting this battle against mail-in ballots all by himself. It's not their problem. Republicans can retire to the country club, and the Republican leadership doesn't care about whether their party is forced out of power, as long as they get theirs and can go play golf. Democrats can do anything they want in this country. They can break any law and commit any crime, as long as the Republican leadership has a go-along to get along attitude. And it all started with this minor change in California. Democrats saw that Republicans were weak and would put up no resistance to this outright violation of 200 years of election tradition in our country. There doesn't seem to be anyone fighting for the voters of this country to have their voices heard. As long as you can line up enough Democrat judges to agree with what is best for the Democratic Party, anything they say goes. Welcome to one-party rule, America. Let's just hope you don't look like Venezuela or Cuba in the process.